guys, this video is going to be all about the great conjunction that is happening with Saturn and Jupiter in December of 2020. If you follow anybody that has any interest in astrology, then you've probably heard of it by now. But if you happen to only follow me, then, get ready to learn about it. I'm going to be talking about what the great conjunction is, but also just my thoughts on everything regarding it. So as we all know by now, 2020 has been a bit of a wild ride, and it's just going to keep getting wilder as we get into December. We're going through a lunar eclipse. It's November 30th as I film this, and I know we're not technically in December yet, but it is December Eve today, so that's what's happening right now. And then we will be having a total solar eclipse on December 14th, and a solar eclipse usually happens, a total one anyways, around every year and a half-ish. I believe the last one we had was July 2nd, 2019, so if you want to think back to then and know if anything significant happened, it's interesting. Now, in addition to that, we have the Great Conjunction, and that is when Saturn and Jupiter are conjunct, having a little party together at the same degree, and it happens only around every 20 years, every 19 and a half to 20 years, so it's very significant. And the more significant part is that for the last 200 years, it has been happening in an Earth sign. So I believe 1802 is when we started having great conjunctions in Earth signs, and we did have a brief conjunction in Libra in 1980, I believe. So we got a little look at that. But for the most part, we've been having Earth sign conjunctions for the last around 200 years. So that's significant in itself. The last great conjunction we've had recently was May 31st, 2000. So again, you can think back to that time. There was definitely stuff going on. We had, the internet picking up steam and becoming a thing, computers, technology, and it skyrocketed from then. But that's not all the great conjunction is about. Obviously, we have two, in my opinion, very different, but with some similarity planets. We have Saturn, which is, as I always like to fondly call it, the old man of the zodiac. It's all about tradition and time and, authority, but it also has a lot to do with wisdom. I think Saturn can really put us through the ringer. I think it can really make us, learn our lessons the hardest way possible. It puts restrictions and limitations, and it can really, again, be very difficult, especially certain Saturn transits or your Saturn return. But I think that most of the time, if we listen to or we pay attention to what it is we're meant to learn, we can come out at the other side of it better off, having learned some very important wisdom and, life knowledge. So Jupiter, on the other hand, is not a restrictive planet. It doesn't restrict, it doesn't limit. It wants to grow, it wants to expand. It's the planet of higher knowledge, the planet of philosophy, of, religions, spiritualism. But also, I think it's important to point out that Jupiter is not all rainbows and butterflies. Jupiter can be overindulgent. Jupiter can be excessive. Jupiter can be greedy. Jupiter can let opportunities pass it by. So it can bring opportunities, but it can also let opportunities pass it by as well. So I believe these two planets can both bring us lessons in life. They can both be a bit of a teacher. I think they just go about it in different ways. Jupiter does want to bring us knowledge, higher knowledge, and Saturn wants to do so as well. I do think Jupiter is often misinterpreted as a planet that is just going to bring you the goods, bring you the successes, bring you the luck, because it is a planet that is associated with luck, and it definitely is, but I do think that sometimes it will put you through the ringer as well. It's just, it does so in a way that brings you growth and expansion. I think it's not quite as tough as the Saturn influence. So these two planets are going to be conjuncting each other on December 21st, 2020. And also at that time, we are going to be having an equinox. So December 21st, we will be moving into the winter season. And it's interesting because I looked back a few hundred years, and correct me if I am wrong down below, but it looks like we have not had a great conjunction take place on an equinox in a very long time. An equinox when you're looking at it from an astrological point of view, can usually bring fresh beginnings, new starts, but it's usually following closing the door, shutting the door here to progress and move forward here. So it's a bit of a transformative start as opposed to just, a new opportunity being dropped into your lap, like, hey, hello, try this. No, it's more of like something has had to end in order for something else to begin. And this equinox specifically will be moving into Capricorn season, which is a cardinal sign, and the cardinal signs in Capricorn tend to take initiative. They like to move forward, but at a slower pace. And the equinox will be, again, the start of winter. And from this point forward, we will only have longer days of the year. The day will only get longer. We will pass the shortest day of the year. And that sounds well and good, but we're also going to be heading right into the dead of winter. And winter, as beautiful as it is dark and it is tedious, it goes on for a while. So I think that we will be going into this new season, that coincides with this big great conjunction with a lot of hope, but it's not going to be easy. We will get there eventually. I truly believe that, at a point where we have more peace among, society as a whole, but it's definitely not going to be easy. As we go into the new year of 2021, we can be as optimistic as we want to be and say, this is a fresh start. 2020 has been terrible and we're going to move into 2021 and everything's going to be well and good. But that's just not the case. That's not what's going to happen if you look at it from an astrology point of view. But from an astrological standpoint, there's going to be a lot of discord continuing into 2021. And I don't want to sit here and scare anybody or be negative. I just want to be honest and say that, it's always great to be optimistic, but I do think we have a lot of snow to get through before we get to our destination. But as long as we keep the hope alive, then it's definitely a possibility. So, I don't know if I already said this, but this conjunction is going to be taking place in Aquarius. So this is going to also be referred to as the Great Mutation, which is when the Great Conjunction moves elements. And I believe the last time the Great Conjunction occurred in Aquarius, might have been an air sign, but I think it was Aquarius, was in 1405. So it's been quite some time since we've had this type of influence. It's been a while since we've had the Great Conjunction occur in air signs. I mean, it did briefly. We did have a little taste of it back in 1980. We had a conjunction in Libra, but other than that, we've been all earth signs. It's going to be an interesting change. I also want to point out that when this conjunction is occurring with the Saturn-Jupiter energies in Aquarius, a lot of people are saying it's going to be a time of innovation. It's going to be a time for society to progress and let go of old traditions and let go of old structures that need to be dismantled. And, that's something that probably will happen, but I don't think it's going to happen easily whatsoever. And I think that, I'm going to get into this a little further in a minute, but with Pluto still being in Capricorn, Pluto's going to be quite close to Saturn and Jupiter. So whatever is going to be happening, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of resistance of trying to stick to the past and stick to old structures and ones that have worked for us maybe in the past but aren't working anymore. Pluto is going to add to that because Pluto can be a bit of an obsessive, heavier influence. Now, it can be transformative as well, but I think there's really going to be a lot of resistance moving forward. Let's talk about each of the planets and the last time they were in Aquarius. Now, Jupiter, I believe, was in Aquarius in January of 2009 and moved out of there around January 2010. So you can think back to that time and that energy. And Saturn, on the other hand, was in Capricorn. So on March 22nd-ish, Saturn moved into Aquarius, where it stayed for a bit, but then it went retrograde on May 11th. And then it went, back into Capricorn because it was retrograde on July 2nd. And then we went direct in Capricorn with Saturn on September 29th. So now we've been direct in Capricorn for a couple months, and we're going to be moving into Aquarius again direct, where Saturn will stay for a couple of years. So think back to that. I mean, what did you see? What was that taste of that we got? And I think, at least in this country, And I just want to say real quick, like, I don't want to sit here and talk about politics and stuff along those lines, but I do feel like in the current climate of the world and our country, at least I live in America. I mean, it's not just America though, it's worldwide. There's a lot going on, and it's kind of hard. Maybe like in the past, it was easier to avoid talking about politics, but at this point, it's hard not to. It's hard to avoid it. And I don't even really think, is it really considered politics, or is it just considered, world happenings, world events, significant things that are happening to us on a daily basis? So these are things I'm going to be discussing. I'm not going to be getting like crazy about it or anything, but they're going to come up. So if you're not into that, I mean, it's fine. But back in March, when Saturn went into Aquarius, you saw a lot of limitations and restrictions go into place. We went into, what was it, like the lockdown, the first real lockdown. And the government, took a lot of, had a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not control, but like had a bigger presence in our lives than it had in a long time. Not that it ever had, but then it had in a long time. And then we had Saturn, go retrograde on May 11th, and you started to get a sense that things were kind of getting a little bit, there was some rebellion happening right around that time. As you know, like with authority in this country, there was a rebellion against the police. So that was happening. Now, come July, when it went back into Capricorn, that kind of temporarily, I wouldn't say it like died down per se, but I would say it wasn't, as heavy as it had been in May and June. And then when we went into Capricorn direct in September, obviously there's been nonstop talk of the election in this country and more talk again of further restrictions, lockdowns, stuff along those lines. And as we are about to move into, the Aquarius, Saturn Aquarius direct again, here we go again with a lot more talk about lockdowns and stuff along those lines. But it's just interesting. It's just things that are happening beyond our control. And I just think it's interesting that lockdowns are being more talked about again as we move into the Saturn Aquarius. So we have this great conjunction every 20 years, and the 10 years after that, we usually have an opposition. So in 2000, we had the conjunction Jupiter-Saturn take place, and then in 2010, we had an opposition between Jupiter and Saturn. So it's just kind of like an interesting pattern that goes on. So I did want to finish up, though, on my point of what I was talking about with our case of Saturn in Aquarius, is that I do think it brings about further. So Saturn, the planet that has a lot to do with authority, I do think it brings a heavier presence of authority, and almost like, they come and take a heavier presence in our life. But then because of that, a rebellion forms, or, a little further after that, there's a bit of a resistance to that. So I do think we will probably see that again going into 2021. We'll see more governments or just authoritative presence in our lives than we were used to like a couple of years ago. And then eventually you'll probably see a resistance to that again. So that's just my thoughts on the subject. We have this Aquarius energy, right? It's innovative, it's progressive, but it's also very unique. It's new ideas, it's ripping down old structures. And then we have Jupiter, which wants to expand and grow, but can also be a little bit greedy. And I think we're definitely going to see some greed come into play over the course of the next year, couple of years. And we'll probably see greed with authority figures, people wanting too much progression and forgetting about structures that are actually still beneficial. Yes, certain structures, you always do need to be progressing, but there's still a need, and Saturn wants to make sure of this, there is still a need for some type of structures that do work, structures that do have a purpose that suits us. And there might be a bit of a battle of wanting to rip down all these structures without kind of keeping ones that keep us balanced. So there's definitely going to be, I think personally, a lot of push and pull between not only the Saturn-Jupiter energy, but also just the two of them now being in Aquarius. So Saturn goes into Aquarius on the 17th, and then Jupiter follows on the 19th, and then we hit that great conjunction on the 21st. So I just think now that we're at the end of this Earth sign cycle, we're definitely going to see some changes in our society at a political level. I think there might be some discord between expert opinions or between the way we communicate, the way that we get our information, there's going to be a bit of a tearing down of that structure and kind of wanting to build it back up in a way that provides better communication. So for instance, like, always taking one expert's word for something without getting like the full story. And this is like in a lot of different areas, but because Aquarius also has to do with technology and science and stuff like that, I do think it will involve that. And Aquarius is also an air sign, communication, stuff along those lines. And then, like I said, with the way that we get our information, I do think that will change. The way we communicate might change. We're already seeing people communicate more via the internet because of everything going on with the virus and so on and so forth. So I think we'll see more of that. I think we will see more of a push for non-biased media information, but I do think you see a lot of censorship happening right now with these big tech companies, whether it's towards like the left side or towards the right side. I think it's happening all over the place. It's a bit scary. It's kind of like Big Brother is watching. And I do think you will see more, like a bit of a battle against that, about wanting more unbiased, true information, that is available to everybody. I think you'll see a bit of a push and pull around that. Again, I think you'll see some old structures that just aren't working anymore kind of be torn away and make room to progress as a society to a place where we can feel like works better for us now at this time period of our lives. I think that you're going to see some differences in maybe political parties. There might be some changes happening there. It could be that political parties as we know them are changed. Maybe a new political party will rise up, at least in this country. So yeah, I think the Great Conjunction is very significant this year. I think there's other significant happenings as well. I don't think it's like the end all be all, and our whole world is gonna like erupt into like utter chaos, and I don't think that, but I do think you're gonna see some serious changes. And when we look back at this, 5-10 years down the road, maybe further, we'll see the significance of it. Again, there's gonna be this battle, a push and pull of how we get to this point as a society that functions at a level, because right now, and I was saying this in a previous video, there's so much resistance like towards each other, at least again in this country. I think it's worldwide as well, but you see just like this opinion and this opinion, and they can just like, they keep butting heads, and it's really sad to see, honestly. There's a lot of hate going on. Maybe it's because there's so much media constantly talking about it, but I do feel like there's a lot of divide. There's a lot of hate. You hear stories about how family members aren't speaking to each other over politics, which is quite sad to me. I understand why it's getting to this level, but I think that you're going to see with this conjunction moving forward a lot around that, a lot about getting to truths, finding out truths, stuff along those lines, really uncovering more and further knowledge that provides us with information to, again, make unbiased decisions. So yeah, I think it's all very interesting going forward. I think we'll see a lot of changes with like our government and stuff along those lines in the next few years. And, again, just changes with technology, how we communicate. I think we'll see technology, progress yet again. We did see that back since the 2000 conjunction. And look at the difference between 2000 and 2020. It's crazy, right? What did we even have it back then? Like AOL Instant Messenger? Did we even have that yet? But yeah, I think we'll see further ways to communicate, better ways of communication, wanting to communicate in a way that's truthful and honest. And furthermore, I do think, like I said earlier, we will see a heavier government presence for a bit until that gets torn away or rebelled against, resisted against. A lot of resistance, a lot of wanting to change for the better. So I do think we should go into this hopefully. I know I've been kind of like talking, maybe I've seemed a little negative, but I'm very much a believer in, having to go through it, so to speak, in order to get to the happier ending. I don't think expecting things to come easy or wanting that instant gratification that's so popular in our time now is the way to go. I think that being patient, because Saturn does want us to be patient in order to get to points we need to be. Saturn wants us to progress as well. It's just at a much slower pace than, say, like Jupiter, or that we want to progress. So we're just going to have to be patient. And again, go through a lot of resistance in order to get to a happier place. And that's the good thing. That's what we're going to take out of this. Yes, we will probably go through a lot of change we're uncomfortable with, change we don't necessarily think we want. I think we'll see a lot of that changes happening, especially at a higher level authority-wise, that we're like, we don't want that, but it's happening and we have to kind of accept it in a way. And we also kind of have to, I think we're going to have to see a lot of acceptance of times are changing. Like, we cannot control it. We can't control how things are different now. Things are obviously different from last December 2019 to this December. Things have changed a lot. And sometimes I think just having this acceptance of the fact that we cannot change it, we can't. But it's okay. Let's accept it and let's move forward, and let's find a place, like, let's find some satisfaction. Let's find a time when we can finally be content with where we are. Let's find some happiness. Let's find some peace. And I do think we will. Again, I just think it's gonna take a lot. There's gonna be a lot that happens in the in-between. A lot of discord, a lot of rebellion, a lot of resistance. It's just some wild times. It's gonna be a wild ride, but hold on and just be patient. And sometimes if things get to be too much, just step away and just do what you can, and just kind of accept your personal, truth and your personal beliefs and stuff like that, and just kind of step away a little bit, because I know times are a bit crazy right now. So I think that's all. I was going to talk a little bit more about the history with the great conjunctions, but this video is really long, and I feel like we've covered quite a bit. So yeah, I'm going to be doing predictions for the signs for great conjunction. I'm going to go film that now. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on what you think the significance of this great conjunction is down below. I will see you in my next video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up. Turn the notifications on. Click the bell. Do this, do that, do that. But I will see you in my next video. It's like so much you have to do. You don't have to do anything. But so much I'm asking you to do. I will see you in my next video, and have a good day or night.